Welcome back to Slurpcana, and on today's video, we're going to be talking about the brand new Ursula's Return starter deck based on the movie Encanto. Now, the reason why I'm taking a look into this particular deck is actually because of a funny request of my wife to make this deck into a fully Encanto themed deck since she loved the movie, but she also made it a very hard task because she asked me to keep as many of the Madrigal characters as I could. So yeah, I think that this deck starts out pretty well, but there's a lot of things we can tweak to make it a lot better. So how about we take a look at what's inside the deck? Well, to start our deck, we have 3 copies of Agustin Madrigal. He's a okay card, pretty vanilla card. We have 2 copies of Healing Glow. We have 2 copies of Heal What Has Been Hurt. We have 3 copies of Mirabel Madrigal, Prophecy Finder. We have 3 copies of Stitch, Alien Dancer. We have 2 copies of Sebastian, Court Composer. We have 3 copies of Prince Eric, Seafaring Prince. We have 2 copies of Rowley. We have 2 copies of Julieta Madrigal. We have 2 copies of Felix Madrigal. We have a copy of Lost in the Woods. We have a copy of Ariel, Singing Mermaid. Pretty good card on her own, not gonna lie. We have 2 copies of Mickey Mouse, leader of the band. Actually, we have another copy of Lost in the Woods, so we actually have 2 copies of that. We have a copy of Mirabel Madrigal, Gift of the Family, and we also have Look at This Family. Alrighty guys, now that we've seen all the cards of Amber, let me run you down on how I did the upgrades for this deck. Starting on what I decided to be the main card of the deck, which is Mirabel, Gift of the Family. This card is really good, and if you're going for a full Encanto theme deck, I think that she's gonna be the main engine. Her ability reads that whenever this character quests, your other Madrigal characters get +1 lore this turn. That is a huge ability, especially if you have a full deck of Madrigal characters. And she also has support, so whenever she quests, you can give that to another character. Alrighty, now let's take a look at the Amethyst cards. We have 3 copies of Casa Madrigal. We have 2 copies of Hey Hey. We have 2 copies of Poor Unfortunate Souls. We have 2 copies of the Queen. We have 3 copies of Antonio Madrigal. He is a pretty mediocre card, not gonna lie. We have 3 copies of Marshmallow. We have 2 copies of Luisa Madrigal. She's a pretty good card, I just wish she was inkable. We have 2 copies of Dolores Madrigal. We have 2 copies of Camilo Madrigal. We have 3 copies of Elsa, Queen Regent. We have 1 copy of Isabela Madrigal, Golden Child. We have 1 copy of Pepa Madrigal, Weathermaker. We have 1 copy of Bruno, Out of the Shadows. Now, he's one of those cards that his effect doesn't really synergize with the other cards in the Madrigal deck, so I had to get pretty creative in how to go about including him in the deck without really having to take him out. But I'll go over that here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and keep looking at what other cards we have. And lastly but not least, we have 2 copies of TikTok, Ever-Present Pursuer. Alrighty guys, that's all the cards for Amethyst. Okay, so now let's go over on how I decided to upgrade this deck by first getting rid of everything that we don't need in this deck. Like I said, we want to keep all the Madrigal characters because we really want to synergize with Mirabel. So let's go ahead and take everything that's not a Madrigal character. So this is what I'm left with. It's a pretty huge chunk of the original deck, not gonna lie, but like I said, we really want to play off of that ability of having as many Madrigals as we can, and all these cards are not really Madrigals. They're not really getting powered up by Mirabel, so we're gonna be getting rid of these bad boys. Okay, now that we have all the cards that are Madrigal, we're gonna go another cut of cards. We're gonna cut the ones that really shouldn't be here, and we're gonna add more copies of the ones that do need to be in here. For example, Agustin. I was saying he's a pretty mediocre card on its own. His stats aren't great. His attack and defense are not the most optimal, and for a 1 cost that only quests for 1, it's not really that great. There's other better options, but just to keep a Madrigal in there, I'm gonna keep 1 copy of him and throw away the other 2. Now we have Casa Madrigal. This is a good location that is cheap, and it's also cheap to move in your characters. I think that is one of those locations that you're gonna have 1 or maybe 2 in the battlefield that will be giving you a couple lore each turn, so we're gonna add another copy. We have 3 copies of Mirabel Madrigal. This one is the Prophecy Finder. Now, even though she's not a great card on her own, she does have support, which means that we can add her attack onto another character like Luisa, and I feel like this number of copies of her really is the most optimal for the build that we're trying to go for, so we're gonna keep that at 3 copies of her. We also have 2 copies of Julieta Madrigal, a very solid card for this deck. I think we're gonna be adding 2 more copies. Her ability says that when you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and if you do remove the damage this way, you get to draw a card. That is a great ability. Her stats aren't even that bad, really. Even though she only hits for 1, she has 4 defense, meaning she's not gonna be easily destroyed by a lot of things. and she gives you card draw, which is always really good. Now, Antonio is one of those cards that I'm not really fond of him. He's not very good, but because I do want to keep at least one Madrigal of every Madrigal, we're just going to keep one copy and throw the rest. He's not a very good vanilla card, kind of expensive, stats are okay. Now, a better version of him is Felix Madrigal, because even though he doesn't hit as hard as Antonio, he does quest for 2, so he is a better vanilla card that's going to help you quest for more counters. And if you do have Mirabel, he's going to be questing for 3, which is not that terrible, and like I said, his 2 attack really is not that bad. One of those very good cards that we're going to be adding 2 copies just because he's a better version of Antonio. We have 2 copies of Luisa Madrigal. This card is pretty good in my opinion. I think that she is a little expensive, and since she's not inkable, you're gonna be struggling to really find a good place for her, but I would just keep it at 2 copies because she's gonna be able to take care of big threats. We have 2 copies of Dolores Madrigal. Now, Dolores is one of those interesting cards that is really good. She's a 4 cost inkable that is a 3/3, but she quests for 2, and she reads that when you play this character, if an opponent has an exerted character in play, you may draw a card. Like I said, drawing cards is always a really good ability that you have to watch out for in cards, so we're going to be adding 2 more copies of her into the deck. We have Camilo Madrigal, another great 4 cost. He's a 2/5, which technically he can be a 4/5 if you decide to use one of his abilities, and that's what I like about him, that he does give you the ability to choose at the beginning of your turn what you're going to do with him, whether to quest more or attack more. We have 1 copy of Isabela Madrigal, a great solid 5 cost that's going to be questing for 4, which is a lot of questing, and if you have her in casita, she's going to be questing for 5. We're going to add 3 more copies of her because I feel like she's going to be one of those cards that is going to be targeted a lot, and if you add 4 copies, at least you can always ink her if you don't really need her, and or gain 4 lore, which is always good. Questing for 4 is always good. We have Pepa Madrigal. She's one of those characters that is really expensive and she's not inkable, which kind of sucks. Quest for 1. Her ability is not that great though. I feel like we're just gonna add 1 more copy just in case you really need to make another character not exert, but she's not very good. We have Bruno Madrigal out of the shadows. He's a 5 cost, not inkable, with a little more better stat of 4 attack and 5 defense. He does quest for 1. Now we have the heart and soul of the deck, Mirabel Madrigal. We're going to be adding 3 more copies of her so that we have a total of 4. Like I said, she's going to be the bread and butter of our deck, and I'll show you guys a pretty fun combo with another card later on in this video that's going to be very interesting and very funny to play. And we have Look at This Family, a very good song that you're going to be able to use with most of your Madrigals since they're all kind of expensive. So you're going to be able to get 2 cards from the top of your library that are character cards, and like I said, drawing cards is always really good. So I would add another 3 copies of this just in case you really need to ink it. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how we're gonna be upgrading this deck. Okay guys, welcome to a little more thematic area. Now that we made the list of cards to add and remove, the deck should look a little something like this. To make it into a 60 card legal deck, I'm gonna go over what cards to add that are not included in the precog. Starting with Alma Madrigal, a great 3 cost that's gonna help us out for a little combo I'm gonna explain here in a little bit. Her ability alone is gonna help us out to get what we need in any given scenario depending on what the current state of the board is at the time of playing her. So we are going to add 4 copies of her for that reason. Another great card to add is Bruno Madrigal, Undetected Uncle, a 4 cost inkable with the underrated ability of being able to tap him to guess the name of the top card of our deck, and if we get it right, we add 3 lore. But I mean, we have to guess and get it right, am I right? So for that reason, we're gonna go ahead and add 4 copies of Gambling Boy, cause we like to gamble in life and in the game too. Another great card we're gonna be adding is Miracle Candle at 3 copies, just in case we need some lore or healing for locations, and it allows us to use it as ink, just in case we need it. We're also gonna add 2 Swing into Action, just in case that we need to be very aggressive. It is a weird scenario in this case or in this deck, but you never know. And also, it's more ink material, honestly. And lastly, but not least important, 4 copies of Bruno's Return, just in case we need something back that might have died, and heal the character in case we need it. Okay, and I know you guys are wondering now that we got all the deck together, how do we play it, how do we use it, what are some good combos? Alrighty guys, so this is gonna be our bread and butter. This is what we're gonna be looking for. You're gonna make sure that when you draw your 7 cards at the beginning of your turn, if you can, obviously without cheating, don't be a cheater, you're gonna make sure that you have a copy of Bruno Madrigal, Undetected Uncle, and a copy of Alma Madrigal. Now you just have to make it to turn 4, and hopefully you have enough ink to play Bruno Madrigal. once you play Bruno, you're gonna pass your turn, it's gonna come back to your turn, and hopefully Bruno's still in the battlefield. If he is,
congratulations!
You've managed to pull the combo. Because all you need to do now is, once it comes back to your turn, you're gonna be playing Alma Madrigal, then looking for Mirabel, the main engine of the deck. Don't be grabbing no other trash, okay? Just make sure you grab her, because she's kinda good, okay? Alright. Anyways, once you've played Mirabel on top of your deck, you're gonna tap Gambling Boy. Not so much gambling anymore. Then you're gonna say Mirabel, draw the card, and you got it right! So then you're gonna proceed and
gain 3 lore!
Like a total Chad. Then on turn 6, you're gonna be playing Mirabel, and hopefully all your other Madrigal characters are gonna be questing for a lot of quest counters. Another great combo that you need to know, this one's not as strong as the last one, but it's a good one to, keep in the chamber just in case if you ever need it. It's a combo with Luisa Madrigal. Now, the way this combo works is hopefully you have 2 copies of Mirabel. It doesn't matter which 2 Mirabels. It could be the one that supports for 2 or the one that supports for 3. It doesn't really matter whichever one. But you would use them both to quest for lore, and then you would play your Luisa, and she has Rush, and she will gain a ridiculous amount of power. You could either get 9 or 10, which is a lot of power. That can kill almost anything in the battlefield, to be honest. In case of Luisa dying, you can play Bruno's Return and give her back to your hand, or if she survives, then you can usually play Julieta and heal her up a little bit, and use some of your other characters to heal her as well. And here are some cards. I wouldn't feel terrible at all if I needed to ink, so just remember these, okay?
Alrighty then.
Well, that's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck and have fun using the deck template. Obviously, feel free to make and modify the deck however you want to play it. This is just a little challenge that my wife did to me, so I did as best as I could. I hope you guys have a fantastic week.
Stay questing, brothers!
Desires take flight.